Hey everyone, it's Brian from Greenfield. Today we're going to talk about skills in Draw Steel, what they are, how they work, and we'll get into some examples at the end. So, what are skills? The current rules packet defines skills as specializations that heroes have outside of their combat abilities. Skills are picked at different steps of the character creation process when you design your culture, select a career, and pick a class. Skills are organized in up to 5 broad categories: crafting, exploration, interpersonal, intrigue, and lore. When you're prompted to choose skills, sometimes you can pick from a category and sometimes from a specific list. That might not seem like a big deal, but it's a nice touch to incorporate both because it makes both homebrew and future design easier, at least in my opinion. By my count, there are 54 skills in the packet. That's a lot, and the rules say it's a lot. Depending on your choices, you'll end up with between 7 and 13 skills on your character sheet, at least based on the current rules. And I think that's just another way that Draw Steel really enables you to create very unique characters. Your skills are an expression of your character, not just a list you're meant to optimize, because it can't be optimized. There's too many. One more observation before we move into how skills work. If you took a skill early in the character creation process, for example, as part of your culture or upbringing, and then you get the same skill as part of your class, you can just pick a different skill. In 5th edition D&D, there isn't a provision for that, at least as far as I'm aware. And sometimes in D&D Beyond, you can run into little quirks where if you pick, say, deception early in the character creation process, and then get deception later on at a different step, it invalidates the first choice, but doesn't prompt you to pick a replacement. There might be some kind of warning, but it's very easy to miss. I've missed it. And so you get issues of a player going who knows how long missing a skill proficiency. It's not a huge deal, but as more and more players engage with tabletop RPGs exclusively through UIs like D&D Beyond, it's going to become a bigger deal. So writing this straight into the rules is small, but it's very player friendly. Now, how do skills work? There are 2 important things to understand. The first is that in Draw Steel, skills and characteristics are separate. In 5th edition D&D, for example, the athletic skill is directly associated with the strength ability. I ask a player to roll an athletics check. They roll a d20, add their strength score, and then add their proficiency if they're proficient in athletics. That leads directly to the second important thing. In Draw Steel, the director or GM calls for a test, Draw Steel's version of an ability check. Those tests are based on characteristics. Give me a might test, give me an intuition test. And then the player can say, hey, director, I have a skill that I think applies here. Can I use it? If the director says yes, then the player can add 2 to their test roll. That's how skills work. The director calls for a test, the player rolls a 2d10, adds the bonus from their characteristic, and then adds 2 if they use a skill. That extra 2 might not sound like a lot, but as we saw in my first video, it can have a big impact on the chance of success. Now, some of you might be watching and thinking that doesn't sound all that different from D&D, but it is. In D&D, the DM jumps straight to calling for a skill check, perception, stealth. To translate Draw Steel's approach into D&D terms, it'd be like the DM asking for a wisdom check to notice something, and then the player saying, hey, can I use perception or investigation? And this is an important shift, probably for a few reasons, but a big one is because from my perspective, it incentivizes players to more strongly engage. Because the director is only calling for a characteristic test, it's up to the player to make the case for applying a skill. It encourages them to engage with the director, engage with the world, and engage with their character sheet. There is an optional rule in D&D that allows skills to work this way, but I've never used it and I've never seen it used. That's partly due to how the DM learns to skip straight to calling for a skill check, and partly because how character sheets are designed, especially on things like D&D Beyond. Now let's look at a bunch of examples of how to combine skills with characteristics. We'll start with some obvious ones and then maybe get a little bit more creative. You can combine agility and hide when hiding behind a barrel, or hide to boost presence to disappear into a crowd. Or how about the escape artist skill? Escaping from bonds like ropes or manacles. That could be agility if you're attempting to picket or David Copperfield your way out. Or it could be might if you're attempting to brute force it. You could also use the perform skill to boost agility or presence, depending on how you're trying to show off. You could use the flirt skill to boost presence if you're being charming, or boost might if you're doing the Captain America rip a tree trunk in half. The interrogate skill can be matched with a might, presence, or intuition test, depending on how you go about interrogating the subject. You could also use any skill to boost a reason test about relevant information. How heavy is that statue? Make a reason test. See if you can estimate it. Can I use the lift skill? I'm experienced in picking up heavy things. Sure. That example is courtesy of Drew from the MCDM Discord. Or let's say you want to destroy something. Might plus blacksmithing to destroy an item or the smithy itself. Or you could boost it with alchemy if you're trying to destroy a lab, and so on. You know the most effective way of destroying something. You could use the ride skill to boost intuition or presence, depending on how you're interacting with the animal you're riding. Or you could use it to boost a might test if the horse is already out of control and you're trying to rein it in. The conceal object skill could be agility if you're trying to quickly conceal something up your sleeve or into a hidden pocket. Or it could be used with intuition if you're looking for a place in the environment that would easily escape notice. But the one that pleased me the most was the thought of using the blacksmithing skill to boost a test made to escape a jail cell, just like in Pirates of the Caribbean. Hopefully that list was enough to illustrate how skills work and to get your creativity warmed up. Now, Draw Steel is still in development. That means that it's possible some or all of this video could become out of date if MCDM decides to change how skills work. I also breezed over the details of how tests work, but that's because I think I'll make that the subject of my next video. I quite like how tests work, spoiler. If you have your own example of how to match skills with characteristic tests, let us know down in the comments below. Thanks, and see you next time.